Welcome to At a Glance, the series in which I give you an appetizer, sample, or glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. And the goal behind it is to skip across the surface of everything to help you decide if you want to look into the Force more so on your own, or perhaps do that and even start collecting the Force as well. So I'll be going over the basics of the Force, right? A brief rundown of them, the whole coloration, symbology, whatever else of the Force. Then I'll discuss what you'll need book-wise to collect them, and some basic ideas for building and painting said Force. That is the idea, and after all of that, you can make a more informed decision if you've never heard about them before to decide if you want to go ahead and look further into that as something interesting, or if you're sold, you can get started collecting and look further in it as well. So with all that said, let's check out what's on the chopping block. Alrighty, up on the chopping block this time for At a Glance is going to be perhaps the most well-known of Loyalist Astartes forces from the first founding. Penned the Codex Astartes, their Primarch did. You know who I'm talking about. They're incorrectly referred to as Mary Sue Marines. It's just kind of used as a catch-all term to describe anything like these guys. We are, of course, talking about the Ultramarines chapter. So before we get into skipping across the surface of this massive lake that is the Ultramarines lore, we will talk a bit about their coloration, which really also needs no true introduction. In fact, doing an At a Glance on the Ultramarines, which is a redo of this one, I have done them before, I'm redoing it, so that video will be gone, is silly in my mind because if you're brand new to 40k, chances are you at least know what they look like because you've seen them, right? They're in the 9th edition trailer. They have been the Codex art since 4th edition of the Space Marine Codex. They've been kind of the literal poster child of Warhammer 40k. It's an Ultramarine and a Stormcast Eternal kind of used as kind of the two flagship images for Games Workshop. I mean, they are very well known. But I'll do my best just to skip across the surface and maybe help out people who are really new and unsure of them to be able to dive into this massive, massive lake of lore. So, they really need no introduction, but let's go over them. So, Ultramarines is kind of a play on words and also very literal, right? It's a play on words because you could kind of look at it as a take of Ultra and Space Marines, so they are Ultra Space Marines, Ultramarines. That's a little bit of fishing, you have to dig into it yourself and make that correlation. But more literally, it is their color. If you look up Ultramarine, you'll probably find, I believe, a soccer team. Yes, I call it soccer. I believe there's a soccer team called the Ultramarines, and you will find out also that it is a color. Ultramarine is a color. It's a deep blue color, which is the color of the Ultramarines chapter, so it's very fitting, right? So the main armor color is blue. Real quick, pre to post heresy, you'll see in some art, in some cases, the blue is done a little bit differently, right? Not too much. The difference is a slight hue change of the blue. And I think, and I'm not talking artwork necessarily all the time, sometimes also in models. Artwork, it all depends on the page being printed on, who's printing it. The coloration will always shift a little, but I think it's also done deliberately pre to post heresy because of the fact they're going to look virtually identical. It helps you identify I'm looking at pre-heresy artwork versus post-heresy artwork, maybe. In any case, they're blue armored. They utilize black weapons, but classically they also have had red weapons. They have red helmet lenses. They do designate battlefield roles a little bit by helmet. Not everywhere, not in their high command necessarily, but when it comes to the squad level, a red helmet post-heresy signifies a sergeant. It didn't always mean this. It meant something negative in a sense, in essence, in the Great Crusade time period, but it came to represent sergeant and or be honored by being given the sergeant's helmet color. So sergeants in the Ultramarines utilize red helmets. Veterans of the Ultramarines utilize white helmets, and a veteran sergeant has a white stripe down their red helmet. They're not the only chapter to do sergeant helmet designation this way. I believe the Imperial Fists do it also, but it comes from the tome that is the Codex Astartes, written by the Primarch of the Ultramarines. So with that said, ornateness, chest emblems, other ornate things on a model is done in gold. When it's going to be something fancy and ornate, it's gold on an Ultramarine. This does not include the markings for the shoulder pad trim, I should say. It's not really markings, but it doesn't include the shoulder pad trim. Shoulder pad trim denotes company color. It's one of the ways the Codex Astartes dictates you can denote company. And the Ultramarines use that way. So when you see shoulder pad trim, you're not looking at what is standard across the chapter. That changes by company. This is important because chances are you've seen mostly second company. That's not how all Ultramarines look. It's very close. The only difference is shoulder pad trim. So let's go through it. First company, always for Space Marines, more or less, is veterans, right? Even the kind of self-contained mini chapter of great companies that are Space Wolves, Logan Grimnar's first company is held in a bit more prestige and capability, right? And they don't follow the Codex Astartes at all. Anyways, back to the Ultramarines. First company is the veteran company. So these guys will utilize white shoulder pad trim. Sometimes you could say it's silver, but really it's white. Their helmet across the board for that company is going to be white. So Terminators don't have shoulder pad trim, but they have white helmets and they're only in first company, so it's pretty obvious that they are veterans. Their sergeants will have the red helmet with the white stripe as well. So shoulder pad trim and helmet is white for first company. Second company does not change helmet color in any real way, but it is going to have the gold shoulder pad trim that you're probably most used to seeing. It is the poster child company of the poster child Space Marine chapter, which is the Ultramarines, which are the poster child of 40K. So classically, however, it was yellow trim, actually factually yellow trim. They went to gold. I think the gold does look better. Yellow is very classic era, right? And it can still work. You're not doing it wrong if you do it yellow. You're just doing it classic. So having said that, third company is red shoulder pad trim. If you've seen the model for Uriel Ventress, he's got green shoulder pad trim. That's fourth company coloration for the shoulder pad trim. Fifth company does black shoulder pad trim, looks very sharp, very nice. Sixth company is a reserve company, the start of the reserve companies. It does orange shoulder pad trim. Seventh company is purple. Eighth company is gray, not to be confused with white. So if you were to have both in there, you would very much want to make it very clearly gray. I would go with a darker shade of gray to really help sell it. And then ninth company does a different shade of blue for their shoulder pad trim, and scout company has no color designation. They are scouts. It's pretty self-explanatory. So that's a little more in-depth breakdown of their coloration, but it's important because if you want to collect Ultramarines, you really can do some cool stuff with shoulder pad trim color. And we'll get to that a little bit later. Outside of that, I've told you everything there is to know about the Ultramarines coloration. Their symbol and their squad markings you'll have in droves. They're in basically every generic Space Marine kit. You'll have no problem having the Ultramarine symbol. So when it comes to the background of these guys, they are supreme tactical flexibility. Astartes are all tactically flexible. Space Wolves, Blood Angels, Dark Angels. All of them are tactically flexible. It's their whole shtick being an Astartes. They have to be able to respond and overcome any battlefield situation. They are the surgeon scalpel of the Imperium, the spear tip. They are the ones that get the job done, more or less, no matter what. The Ashram Militarum is the big, unwieldy sledgehammer that will do things, but it's very unwieldy, collateral damage galore. Not that the Imperium cares about collateral damage, they'll do it no problem. But Space Marines are the ones that will be able to land into the thick of it, cut off the head, and let the body die situation, where the Ashram Militarum is the grinding of attrition. So being able to do that spear tip decapitation strike, they need to be able to respond to a variety of threats and counter all threats. So Astartes inherently are jack of all trades and inherently are very good at it, and the Ultramarines really embody that tactical flexibility. Their Primarch penned the Codex Astartes. And while, for example, the Space Wolves don't utilize the Codex Astartes, you could take the Codex Astartes philosophy if we had the actual massive tome and collection of tomes in front of us, we could page through it, look at the Space Wolves organization and breakdown of how they do things their own way, and we could make generalizations and similarities and look at it and kind of break it down via the Codex Astartes, even though they don't follow it. Codex Astartes is this massive, generalistic, and very specialized writing to basically be your guide to warfare. Because their Primarch wrote it, the Ultramarines utilize it extensively, thoroughly, and give it much reverence and everything else. It's a source of memes and jokes. But part of the writing penned by their Primarch is that adaptability and improv is a part of the Codex Astartes. It's just not the most popular part. In any case, that is their whole shtick, and I can't really just talk about Ultramarines because there's so much lore written for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they had the most lore written for them as the Space Marine chapter goes. So if you're just new to 40K, if you checked out GW's website, chances are you've seen these guys. Like I said, they're the poster child. They are a lot of people's first real glimpse into 40K because you see them in artwork and everything else. They're in the trailer, etc. So they are a force that doesn't need much to be said about them without quickly getting bogged down by the gravity of all of their lore. So to kind of conclude the quick lore wrap up, if you will, this is a force that in the lore is, called Mary Sue. They're not. They're also a force, but I get why, right? I'm not going to hate on it. I'm just going to be more factual about it. They're also a force that people will joke at and say, well, the writers from GW just make them as powerful as they want to every time. And that's true of the IP for any force. It's all fictional, but lore-wise, they are a very powerful chapter. They're a very well-known chapter, and they're very well-respected. In most theaters of warfare, when they show up in a combined arms campaign, their leadership sometimes is utilized, right? They are deferred to for tactics and overall command of whole theaters of war. Not all the time. If they show up late to the party because they were requested for aid later on, they're not going to all of a sudden necessarily assume command, but they are treated with respect, not just by Astartes of different gene seed, but also across the military board of the Imperium. Of course, it doesn't mean everybody just bows down to them, not at all. Heads are butted on multiple occasions, and other first founding forces have and will receive kind of equal reverence if they're the only first founding force there, because it's the original, right? But they are very, very well known and respected. They're probably the most well-known chapter in the galaxy of the Imperium, because it's the Ultramarines. They're the warrior kings. They run a mini empire. They're very well known. Their name gets around. So that is really all I got to say on the Ultramarines. They, being jack of all trades, will allow any playstyle to really function and flow if you wanted to play Ultramarines. But one of the things that is a little bit counterintuitive to them being the poster child and everything else is that they're viewed as vanilla, right? Because they have this jack of all trade mentality, they're considered vanilla Marines. And I've used the term myself. Truth is, they have plenty of flavor. The problem is, you don't get that exemplified in the book much for the Space Marine Codex, because it's every Astartes Codex, especially now. Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Dark Angels, Death Watch are a part of the Space Marine Codex with their own supplement book. Well, guess what? The Ultramarines have a supplement book as well. It's from 8th edition, but they said it's still viable. They may eventually reprint it, but I wouldn't count on it for some time yet. And they have it. Why do Ultramarines have it, you might say? Because there's flavor in this chapter. Very Greco-Roman. There's a lot of flavor and lore and cool stuff to embody with the Ultramarines that you don't want to bog down a book that is dominated by their presence already. They are utilized by the Space Marine Codex to kind of showcase marking, showcase things, and kind of describe Space Marines to you already. So you got to save room in there for the Imperial Fist, the Raven Guard, and everybody else, right? So there's more. I just didn't want to go through all of them. So as a result, they never really got their full sense of flavor. And just by the fact that the book is basically using them to describe the everything, and then they go on to describe how Imperial Fists and Raven Guard and Iron Hands and etc. are different. You get a more sense of flavor innately by hearing about those differences, and therefore the Ultramarines come across as vanilla yet again. But in having their own supplement book now, you get that flavor infused back into them, which is very cool. So to collect them is very obvious, Space Marine Codex with the Ultramarine supplement to get that full flavor injection. As far as building and painting and collecting the models of these guys, it's made in the shade, right? All generic Space Marine kits are useful for the Ultramarines. Most all of them on GW's website, the kits are showcased, painted up as Ultramarines already. From Firstborn to Primaris. There are also special character models, of course. The thing you want to decide truly is, are you trying to represent a specific company, or are you going to do a combined arms approach, I'll call it. There were 4 Ultramarine players in a store I used to play at back when I lived on Long Island. One of them was second company, well, 2 of them were second company players, which is fine. You all need to be different company players. They don't know each other, right? One of them played third company, and one of them played fifth company. So you could always pick a company from the battle companies and go that route. You also can have elements of other companies in there. And indeed, if you have Stern Guard veterans and Terminators, you have elements of first company in your force, painted accordingly. If you wanted to, you could collect, I don't know, fourth company with first company elements, and then you could have, let's say, Devastator support from ninth company, and therefore have some, some different shoulder pad trim colors just to spice it up and make it more uniquely your own. So you can just pick one company and go with it. You could just showcase kind of like a bunch of different squads coming together, led by a certain captain or whatever else. If you want to just do that route, you don't have to, but it's definitely a way you could do it. And it does allow you to kind of personalize the Ultramarines a bit, which sounds almost kind of funny when you first think about it on initial glance. So the decals are there in spades, so you don't have to worry about that. That's covered. The blue armor, there's loads of tutorials out there on how to do it, so I'm not really going to touch upon that too much. Just remember, their ornateness is done in gold. So even if you collect 5th company with black shoulder pad trim, your chest emblem is still going to be golden. Your if they have something ornate on their leg armor, it's going to be golden. If you have a special symbol on the shoulder pad, like an Imperial Eagle or on the shoulder pad or anything like that, that'll be golden. It's just the trim that would be different. And with that said, they are Greco-Roman, so if you find any cool bits that can fit thematically that way to be applied to your Ultramarines, all the better. Anyways, that's all I got for this massively well-known force. It's, like I said, kind of silly to do an at-a-glance because you don't even need this. You've probably been semi-indoctrinated in what the Ultramarines are about just by getting involved in 40K, but nevertheless, here you are. So thanks so much for sticking through it. I know, kind of weird, but I will be continuing, like I mentioned, the redos. So if you want something that hasn't been done yet, or a redo to happen sooner, you can check out the playlist, comment which one there you want to see redone sooner, or a whole brand new force. If there's enough lore, I can do that as well. Thanks so much for stopping by, and until next time, take it easy.